Kegham is a Paris and Cairo-based multidisciplinary creative director, fashion practitioner, visual artist, and educator. He is a professor of fashion studies, image and design, and the academic ambassador of the fashion design department at the German International University. Kegham studied image design in fashion, visual arts at the American University of Cairo, visual culture and design at Goldsmith College University of London, and fashion studies at the Central St. Martin's and London College of Fashion. Kegham will be sharing with us a wonderful paper on confronting the archive on photo Kegham of Gaza.
Good morning everyone. I'm so humbled to be in such a panel with amazing practitioners, and both of your projects really I was not familiar with, and it's very, very inspiring. I'm personally thrilled to be talking about the project of Photo Kegham of Gaza for the first time in Palestine. I've been working for years and years on it and presented it in many countries and cities, but never in Palestine. So at least this is the first encounter to be talking about a work which is in its core Palestinian in Palestine. So without further ado, let's start with a short video of the exhibition.
أتجرأ وأقول إن كيغام كان أهم مؤرخين قطاع غزة بالصورة.
يعني كان كيغام لما ينقال في غزة كيغام يعني هو الوحيد اللي كان كذا مصور فيه في غزة، بس هو كان يعني هو اللي كان زي ما تقول الملك طبعا كل المصورين في غزة. انه والله انا عملت هاي الصورة عن كيغام. عن جد كان يعني له ثقله في البلد، كان بني آدم له ثقله واحترامه في غزة.
نرى تطور مدينة غزة رصدها شهر بشهر ربما، أو يوم بيوم، أو أسبوع بأسبوع، أو سنة بسنة، لا أعلم، لكن تستطيع من خلال ترشيح كيغام أن ترى تطور مدينة غزة من الأربعينات إلى الثمانينات. كل ذلك موثق بيد كيغام، مع اسم كيغام، وعين كيغام، وقلب كيغام. ربما جمعتنا مأساة اللجوء، مأساة التشرد، مأساة فقدان الجذور، فاستنبطنا جذر واحد انزرعنا نحن وكيغام الأرمني الفلسطيني والأرمني، انزرعا في تربة غزة. كيغام التقط الحالة الاجتماعية والفنية والثقافية في قطاع غزة. كيغام صور عبد الحليم حافظ في غزة، صلاح في غزة، نجاة الصغيرة في غزة، شاهد في غزة، موثق زيارة جون بول سارتر الفيلسوف الفرنسي إلى قطاع غزة. كل ذلك في أرشيف كيغام. فأدركت أن هناك من يكتب تاريخ غزة بالصورة، وهذه عبقرية.
A toddler survivor of the 1915 Armenian genocide, Kegham Djeghalian reaches Syria and grows up across the cities of the Levant. When he comes of age, he moves to Palestine and works in a series of jobs, including a tattoo practice for the soldiers of the British battalion. In Jaffa, he marries Zevat Nakashian, and they decide to settle in Gaza, where he establishes his Photo Kegham studio in 1944, the first photography studio in Gaza. The studio gradually evolves into a key institution in Gazan society. Mentoring and supporting young photographers, Kegham contributes to the democratization of the photographic practice in the city and becomes widely regarded as its godfather. For almost 4 decades, Kegham steadily inscribes the photographic history and memory of Gaza through his social, official, political, documentary, and studio photography during its turbulent transition periods under the British Mandate, the Egyptian rule, and of course the Israeli occupation of 1956 and 1967. Declining to leave Gaza at any point in time since 1944, he passes away in 1981. As I came of age myself, after finishing art school many moons ago, I felt the duty to work on Kegham's archive and revive his legacy. But for years, I only encountered stories, accounts, and praises of him, yet only crumbs of his photographs, most of which are personal family photos that I found at home. So this scarcity of his work available to me, my many failed attempts to reach Gaza, and the false denial of the survival of his negatives by the family who was given his studio, made me realize that the work ahead is colossal. It's a long time, it's a long-term, full-time endeavor. For over 10 years, I had attempted to delve into this quest, but many obstacles, frustrations, phobias, and my own young career did not allow it to culminate. Until 2018, when my father found 3 small red boxes buried deep in his closet, which he had completely forgotten about, and he had forgotten even how they reached there. He gave them to me, and as I opened them, I found this. An entire paraphernalia of letters, photos, negatives, envelopes, postcards, receipts, etc., etc. Truly layers of history, incidents, documents, and beyond. And this leads me to the main topic of this presentation, how I went from these boxes to the narrative and core of the exhibition that was held at Cairo Photo Week in 2021. To approach a raw, untouched, unworked archive is to engage in a practice of what I call para-archaeology. Archaeology of the photographic artifact, archaeology of narratives and identities, and archaeology of historicity. The physical act of wearing gloves and the hand gesture of unboxing or excavating each element gently and handling each object minutely was key to my later subjective artistic engagement with the work. This gesture in its literal and metaphorical act became almost obsessive. I fell into a loop of systematic, formal, archival labor, with the unboxing, scanning, indexing, identifying, researching, dating, packaging, etc. But through this methodical labor, I realized I was losing perspective of the project at hand and losing my subjectivity as his grandson, also as a visual artist, addressing a personal yet significant project which transcended me or my family. And this frustration and sense of disorientation with the work led me to a certain realization or a revelation, if you will. That I'm not an archivist and I'm not a historian. And that perhaps the project at this stage is not about producing a comprehensive study on Kegham's photographic legacy. After all I had was 3 red boxes, really constituting a tiny decimal of his archive, of Kegham's work. Certainly not enough to produce an opus of his photographic legacy. Instead, I realized that my mission here was to construct meaning and discourse across the structure of differences that are present in the three red boxes, and to cultivate a plane through which my subject and object are generated and intersect to produce meaning and knowledge. And here, I unapologetically position myself as an artist, a curator, a visual researcher, but above all his grandson, who's conversing with his grandfather's work. So this self-liberation from systematic archiving gave me a certain conceptual clarity on my topic. The project was in fact about what Dr. Majid talked about: ruptures, disruptions, disrupted histories of Kegham himself, of Western Armenian context, disrupted history of his own physical archive through its precarious survival or definite loss. And lastly, of course, that of Gaza and its families. The notion of disrupted history became the core tool that guided me through the conceptualization of the work, as it is a clear and a common denominator of all its major signifiers. Running the risk of decontextualizing, I decided to disrupt the formal reading of the archive. I chose to consciously give up trying to identify people I couldn't recognize or trying to precisely date every single photograph. Instead, I opted to engage in a raw confrontation with the photographs. And this kind of disruptive reading generates a genuine ambiguity that is fruitful, though truly unsettling for the work. And I embrace this ambiguity in order to articulate the affective and the nostalgic, but also to acknowledge the disrupted narrative and context of Kegham's story and his photographs, and surely that of Gaza's memory. This is demonstrated mainly in the deliberate absence of captions, descriptions, or dates on the displayed work, except for one section of the exhibition, which I elaborate on later. The work I presented opted for a representation in typology rather than chronology, where historiography becomes secondary, yet inherently alluded to through the subject, objects, and spaces shown in the photographic material. The focus of my research was on Kegham originally, the photographer and the person, but through both it has become a non-linear reading of Gaza. In retrospect, this risky absence of captions and dates, so alien to an archival exhibition or an archival practice, I call it the anti-archive, was the major factor that gave this body of work a certain urgency or a certain quality which transcended any historical or political association with such a heavy politicized piece of geography. It normalized, humanized, and depoliticized the Gazan subject, a subject that has been widely mediated and perhaps victimized with very specific connotations in recent years. It offered an open space for a raw confrontation with the photograph and an affective reading of the visual memory of Gaza from the side of the audience. And by doing so, it aimed to demystify the land, people, and subjective histories that once were. The exhibition is divided into 4 thematics which delineate the discourse I aimed to establish. First, the studio, which situates and contextualizes Kegham's studio photography practice as a key institution of photography in Gaza, and through which Kegham gained his identity and assimilation within the city. Gaza Memento, which presents a various ensemble of photographic material and maps out Kegham's social and political engagement with Gaza while unveiling realities of Gazan lives. So in this room, you'd find all kinds of documentation, from political documentation, weddings, funerals, appearance of officials, landscapes, portraits that are outside of the studio. Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brothers, being in Palestine in 1947, 46 actually, even though I said I should not date, but that's, that I knew. It wasn't there. It does change a lot of narratives of understanding or reading the connection between Cairo or Egypt and Gaza. Family album, a nostalgic indulgence in his or my family story, which also serves as a mode of reading a facet of Gaza's socio-geographic reality in mid-20th century. And the last room, the problematic room, the Zoom call. It displays some of Kegham's key photographs mediated through a Zoom call between Gaza and Cairo, in exchange which also served to expose the complex problematics in accessing his work in Gaza, another facet of a disrupted history and a disrupted archive. But in this room, the dating and captions were present, as you see. Those were photos that were processed, mediated, and narrated through the Zoom call, and yet denied to me as his grandson. The study of Kegham is a complex and multi-layered endeavor, dealing with a palimpsest of problematics, that of his practice as a photographer and his role in the Gazan society, the occupation of Palestine and the Palestinian catastrophe, the migration and assimilation of the Armenians after the 1915 genocide, and Gaza as the ever-changing, turbulent, and contested geography. Well, ever since the exhibition, so since 2 years, I've been bombarded with informal messages on social media from people I didn't know or don't know still, got to know through this mediation, who were photographed themselves or whose family members were photographed by my grandfather. And these messages usually contain mobile photos of the original prints and are followed by either nostalgic accounts or very endearing stories or salamat from the parents to me as the grandson of Kegham. So I aspire for that the next chapter of my project will stem from this mediation of his archives through personal collections and subjective memory narratives. I will attempt to create an interactive map tracing these families, the Gazan diaspora, and the movement of Kegham's photo across cities and countries. And the aim here is to negotiate a different status and an alternative materiality of the archival artifact and its storytelling. To conclude, I would like to say that I truly, truly hope I could gain the support and collaboration of individuals or institutions to urgently help salvage and preserve Kegham's archive and negatives that is present in Gaza. Because every day, this body of archive is endangered and these negatives are decaying. So, thank you.